Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first and hopefully not last episode of the Pop Culture Piggies. My name is Matthew, and I'm super excited to be here to talk with all of you about everything from sports, TV, reality TV, movies, and anything else in the pop culture world.
Yeah, no, Matt. Thanks for the intro there, bud. Really appreciate it. I'm Cam. I'm usually going to be the more right and opinionated one between the two of us. Obviously, I've taught Matt everything he knows, so to see him make this shift up is truly inspiring. And no, and all jokes aside, this is gonna be an awesome time. It's just two guys talking shit, having fun, what every podcast really just aspires to be, which is just two friends talking shit.
Yeah,
And
the
I man, I'm looking forward
we're
to it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I mean, I hope that we get the audience. We were just talking before we hopped on. Like, I hope people enjoy us talking, but even if they don't, we will enjoy it, and that's all that matters. So,
I couldn't get
if anyone is
exactly.
watching this, excuse this is the first episode. We don't really know what we're doing, but we will have fun. And yeah, I think just to start it off, I mean, obviously, it's the new year. We both just watched a shitload of movies and TV and a ton of sports over the last year. So I thought it would be cool to kind of just hear from you what have been kind of some of the highlights for you, any kind of favorite movies, favorite TV shows, what have you been watching recently? And we
Yeah,
can kind of get into it from there.
yeah. I mean, so it's funny, right? Like I'm kind of in a weird place because I love good movies, but I also thoroughly enjoy bad movies. And when I say bad movies, I'm talking about like movies that are just like, hey, these are not movies that people typically look forward to watching. Like a movie called Hot Frosty. There's a movie called Hot Frosty on Netflix, holiday movie. No one really should take the time to watch that movie, but I love those kinds of movies. But there's been honestly 2024 for me. I'm a bit of a horror guy, and I'd say 2024 was one of the strongest years for horror films we've had it in a long time. Not that we don't have good movies coming out every year, but I found that 2024 just had banger after banger after banger. They had some duds too. Don't kid yourself, but really, I mean, in terms of like films, to end the year off with Nosferatu was just like a culmination of everything great about 2024. What did you think? Did you watch Nosferatu? Did you ever get around to it?
I haven't watched it yet. It's on my watch list, but to kind of echo your point, I do think horror is like making a massive comeback. And this year, I'm a big horror guy as well. That's probably, I watch all genres, but that's probably my
Mhm.
go-to. And this year alone, I mean, I use Letterbox. Are you on Letterbox?
No, you know what? I've been meaning to get on Letterbox. I'm not on it yet. I do want to get on it though, because I do want to just
Yeah.
post movies and be a critic.
Yeah, it's really nice. Like I have my letterbox open here, and I mean my favorite movies from 2024, like some of the top ones are horror. I mean,
Yeah.
Smile 2 is in my top five. The Substance was obviously
Oh,
awesome.
incredible.
Long Legs I really liked.
So
Um,
Long Legs
and
is in my
then
top five.
yeah, Longlegs was
That's in my
awesome.
top
I
five. I
think
love Long
Speak No
Legs. I
Evil
thought
was
Long
really
Legs was like a
fun.
masterpiece. Yeah.
Yeah, Longlegs was
hmm
great.
I,
Just going down the list of horror alone, I mean, I thought Sydney Sweeney and Immaculate was a pretty good
yeah.
movie.
Yeah, and she was
Um,
good. She was really good in that
then
movie. Like,
and
you know.
and then it gets to the point like where you're talking about where like there are some that were like pretty shitty that I still enjoyed. I mean, there was like Maxine was probably the worst of the three in that series.
I
Um,
would agree with you. I felt that like the first one was like I really liked the first one. Pearl was like a cool kind of backstory to the character and everything, and then Maxine I think kind of jumped the gun a little bit. It wasn't that it was bad. Like I still enjoyed it. Like let me rephrase it. When I say that there are bad movies, by the way, they might be critically maybe not the most popular films critically, but that doesn't mean that I left being like that was a piece of shit. I hated that movie. I didn't walk out of Maxine being like that was a piece of shit. I thought it was
no, definitely not. I think
yeah.
there's a difference between, especially when it comes to horror, I think there's a big difference between bad and then boring. Like something can be like not the greatest. Like I didn't think Maxine was the greatest, but it was by no means boring. And if I leave a horror movie and I'm not bored or it's not completely stupid, I'm mostly happy. I think like getting to like the more really bad stuff. I think like Strangers, like the revival of Strangers was not very good.
No, it's
Time
not.
Cut on
Tarot.
Netflix.
Tarot was terrible. Holy shit,
Which
Tarot was
one?
bad. Tarot.
I don't think I
You know,
saw it.
like Ned from the Spider-Man movies, like Peter Parker's like Filipino friend.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
he was in this movie, and it was bad, man. It was really bad. Even he, like, even the cast, you could tell they're like, yeah, this movie's terrible. Like you could tell when a cast like reads a script and like, all right, well, rent's coming due, and I got to make some of that money back. So it was like one of those terrible. But like for every tarot that we had, like for example, The Substance was amazing. It was like so good, and
Yeah.
the Golden Globes were last night, and I was so happy to see Demi Moore win a Golden Globe for that movie.
Yeah, I
She
mean,
deserved it.
it's probably good that we're talking about this now because I did think the Golden Globes was interesting. One, I was surprised. I'm happy Demi Moore won, but I was surprised because normally horror stars don't get that recognition. And I wouldn't say The Substance is like a traditional horror movie. It is like very much like an acting masterpiece as well.
Mhm.
But it was interesting, and I was also shocked that Honora was shut out of the Golden Globes last night.
Probably one of the biggest shockers to me because Anora, like we're talking about horror movies. Let's even shift from horror movies. Anora was a top 10 movie for me. I mean, I know that a lot of people agree. That's not a controversial take, by the way. I'm making it seem like that's a big thing. A lot of people loved Anora. You know what I mean? Like I thoroughly
Yeah,
thought Anora was great. She to me was probably the best, one of the best top three performances of the year, male, female, doesn't matter. So like, if I'm looking at it from like that perspective, like yeah, Sean Baker directed a great film. Um, the cast itself were great, but I just was also very kind of surprised that Honora didn't really. I don't know. I don't know what happened there.
and I wonder if that will translate to the Oscars in the next couple months. Normally, like Golden Globes, like it is a little bit of an indicator. It's not the end all be all, but yeah, to see Honora, which is just super popular, and it's like I don't, and I do think it's wildly considered a top five movie of the year. Like to me, it's probably like pretty basic, but it was my number one movie of the year. I just
Interesting.
enjoyed it
Okay.
from start to finish. And
Interesting.
yeah, I think
Hmm.
like you said, the performances, like Sean Baker was great directing it, and it just was one of those movies to me that it it didn't have any negatives. Like I wouldn't say it's the best movie ever. It's not the best movie of the last 5 years,
All
but
right.
I think if it wins Best Picture, it's certainly deserving. And I thought it was the favorites up until last night.
For me, so this is where I have like a tough time with Best Picture, right? Because this is where Best Picture it's an Oscar problem. But so what is the Best Picture? Is it the best movie or is the movie that had the biggest impact, right? And sometimes it goes back and forth. Like if you're asking me, hey, what was the best picture of 2024? I'm gonna say Dune Part Two. It was an epic. It had cultural relevance. It was the biggest movie at a time, one of the highest grossing movies of the year, easily. And I find that those are the movies, typically speaking, that are going to go on the like that should go on the best picture. Like, growing up, and I found this more so growing up, where in a time that we did, the best picture was always usually one of the biggest movies of the year. Only I'd say around the 2010s did it become more of like, hey, these indie films are actually the best movies of the year. But like back in the day, that was not the case. Like if it was like between like Gladiator, and I know Gladiator is obviously a far shift, but between like Gladiator and like an indie film in the 90s, like Gladiator's taking that 9 times out of 10. And don't get me wrong, I love that independent filmmakers and smaller like budget films and smaller film companies are getting the recognition they deserve. But I think one of the issues with the Oscars, and like this is not like a new point. A lot of people have brought this up before. This is not like a cam exclusive, but um, I think one of the big things is that people have a tendency to want the films that they've seen win. And so a film like Anora, like we both have seen it, but we're big movie guys. Like we love watching
Yeah.
all types of movies. the average viewer is not really as invested in a movie like Anora. Understandably so. And that's like
Yeah, and
there's no slight on that, you know.
I think the problem with Anora too is it didn't market itself as well. I mean, obviously, you'll never market yourself as well as a Dune. It's just not possible. But
Hmm.
for a movie as good as Anora, it feels like people don't really know what it is, to your point. It's like anyone that sees it enjoys it. It's funny, there's action, there's emotion. It has everything that anyone would like.
Hmm.
If you're a complete pervert, you'll like it too.
Yeah, I love it. If
But
you're it's one of those movies my dad would take me to back in the day and be like, just don't tell your mother.
yeah, but I mean, like to your point, it does make sense. Like we both grew up when these epics were
Lord
definitely
of the
winning. Like
Rings.
Titanic won,
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings,
Dark Knight.
Gladiator. To
I
your
don't.
point, like
Yeah.
these big movies won.
Yeah. I don't think Dark Knight won, but I'm just saying like those were the movies in the conversation, right? And then it shifted, and it's not that that's a bad
Like
shift, by the
Green
way.
Book
That's
is winning now.
yeah. I mean, like, you know, if we're looking at like the movies that came out this year, right? Um, you know, the best picture, right? Because they don't really do like, you know, the Golden Globes is fun because they have the comedy and then they have the drama, so kind of everyone wins. But the Golden, like the Oscars is like, no, we have it's best picture. That's it. I don't care if you're a comedy, if you're a dramedy, or if you're the horror movie. Like if you're the best, you're the best. And so I just find that it's you know, the Oscars as a whole, typically speaking, they're gonna have that kind of, you know, ego and they're gonna have that kind of thing. I think a movie like Anora has a chance of obviously winning Best Picture at a thing like the Oscars, but at a thing like the Golden Globes, I feel like the Golden Globes are a little more of like a hey, this is more of like a fun kind of award show. And also like
Well,
we haven't even gone into the fact that a lot of the Golden Globe pictures are like not to sound whatever, but a lot of it's because, you know, people pay the Hollywood Foreign Press, which obviously plays a major factor.
yeah. So I guess like to flip it a little bit more to those kind of bigger budget movies. Obviously, you mentioned Dune as like the epic of the year, but then the other epic of the year is Wicked. So I know Wicked is a little bit controversial right now, where a lot of people love it, and then a lot of people are maybe upset that it is split into two parts or it's too long. It's like they're not that into like the remake of the play. Did you see Wicked, and how did you feel about
Yeah.
the Wicked movie?
So I saw. So I want to preface this by saying I never saw Wicked the play. I was never like a Wicked guy. I was like, you know, the musical theater that I kind of watched was just never Wicked based. So Wicked has like a very passionate fan base, right? It's a iconic play, and obviously I think that the way that they did it and the way that they kind of got everyone together, there's a lot of hype around this kind of thing. Cynthia, and I don't want to mispronounce it. It's Cynthia Invira. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, apologies. But
Elviro, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
but she's. I mean, the what a voice. I mean, holy shit. Now, in terms of one of the criticisms I have of Wicked is that I think it's so first it's a stunning movie to watch. Like the effects were great. I think the movie's well cast. I think everyone's very good in it. I do agree that I don't understand why it was split into two, but you know, when Hollywood has a pearl, they're gonna do everything they can to maintain that pearl, and I understand that too, right? A lot of things are being split in half, and we haven't even gone into TV shows yet. We're just talking movies, but you know, one of my favorite TV shows of the year was split in half. I don't think they needed to do that, but I also understand why certain production companies do it. I mean, Wicked is probably going to make it's going to make a shit. It's already made a shit ton of money. Wicked 2 is going to make a shit ton of money as well, right? So it's I don't agree with the fact that they split it in two, but the movie was good. Like it was a good movie. I thought it was great. I never saw the play though.
Yeah.
So I'm like, did you
Yeah,
see
I'm with
Wicked growing
you.
up? Like, were you like a Wicked guy?
So, I mean, obviously, like
Yeah.
growing up, I'm sure you were the same. Like we like saw Wizard of Oz. Like it's like kind of like, I mean, obviously, Wizard of Oz came out way before we were born, but it was like a movie I watched a million times growing up. And
Oh
then
yeah.
I did see the play Wicked in New York.
Oh, so original cast or
Yeah, so No, so I didn't see it with like Kristen
Adina.
Chenoweth and Idina
Mhm.
Menzel. So
Yeah.
I saw it like 7 or 8 years ago, and
Hmm.
I liked it. I thought it was good, definitely very good. And then I saw the movie, and I loved the movie too. Um, Now I wouldn't say it was my favorite movie of the year, but I think it's like certainly a little. I think it's getting a little bit overhated right now in a way,
Hmm.
and I don't think that's deserved because I think the performances are great. Like I understand some people are just so tied to like the Broadway version of things or the original of things that people don't like remakes often, and whether that's a movie or a TV show, it's like in like a famous line from one of my favorite movies, Scream, is like "Don't fuck with the originals," and I think that is
Yeah.
like a big thing in Hollywood where it's like people get upset when you fuck with the originals, and I didn't feel that way with Wicked, but I also am not like that attached to the Broadway version. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my stance on Wicked.
Well,
I'm trying to think of this.
yeah. I mean, to kind of circle back though, you brought up a really good point, right? Where there's a lot of people who are very passionate about a lot of things, right? Especially what they find, played a major role in their lives, right? So I'll give you an example. I'm a diehard Star Wars guy. I love Star Wars. Like I'm a big fan. The original trilogy and the new trilogy. I do love the new trilogy in its own kind of right. Um, and there's a lot of people who don't love Disney Star Wars, and I get that, right? Like I totally understand where they come from. I'm not a big Disney Star Wars guy as well, like myself. Um, but I think a large part of it's because people kind of, you said don't fuck with the original, don't fuck with the source material, don't fuck with the characters, respect them. And I think what we've seen in this generation more so than other generations, because back in the day, like they would remake a movie no problem. We kind of had endless remakes, um, and kind of reimaginings, right, of certain things. I mean, how many fucking slasher movies have they made where Jason's come back and, or like,
Yeah,
and Michael Myers, I think has had now 3 different storylines. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, and like 3 different timelines, 3 different storylines. So it's like, I get it. I think that I agree with you. It's getting a lot of unnecessary hate, but I also understand, like, from a fan's perspective, like, speaking from, as I said, just a fan, as a just like a fan in general. I can understand why people feel passionate about IPs because I understand what an IP can mean to someone. And so, and if anything tarnishes that, legacy for whatever reason, you're gonna get people who are like, no, I can't agree with that. You know what I mean? And luckily for Wicked, like listen, they've been overhated, but it hasn't been as bad as other things. They still have, for the most part, been unanimously
yeah, it's been
praised. I
mostly
mean, I
positive.
haven't seen too much negative press for the film. Yeah, but there is some
Yeah,
negative.
I would
I
say the
do
difference
understand what you're saying
is
there.
like with something like Wicked, and I could be wrong on this. Like I saw the play years ago, but I from what I understand and what I
Hmm.
remember, it's pretty similar to the original. It's pretty close. Like they essentially followed it to a T. I'll say to kind of move a little bit into the TV side of things. Like something like that was
Yeah, sure.
extremely controversial a few years ago was obviously Game of Thrones. And I think the biggest
Right.
problem with something like Game of Thrones and other movies and shows is when they try to go beyond the source material, people get very unhappy. So, and I think that Game of Thrones didn't really have a choice because they stopped writing the book.
They
George
stopped writing
R. R.
the book.
Martin
He's
stopped
that
writing.
that book. That book will never be released. By the way, I hope. Sorry, Game of
Yeah,
Thrones fans. That book will never be released. It's dying
but
with all of
now it's
us.
like something like Game of Thrones is like the ending of Game of Thrones tarnished the whole series for a lot of people. And when I look back on Game of Thrones, I try to tell myself, like, yeah, the first 6 seasons were awesome. The first 4 seasons were like some of the best ever. But all you can really remember is that ending and how upset I felt. And I think that's pretty universal for the most part with Game of
Yeah.
Thrones. And I think with something like Wicked, where I mean, we haven't seen part 2 yet, but I don't imagine it's going to stray too far from the source material.
Hmm.
But with TV, like, and when it's based, and sometimes when stuff are based on books, like a lot of series now are based on books. I mean, there's a lot of those like teen like kind of book things, like
Yeah. Yeah.
Samurai Turn Pretty, like Pretty
Yeah.
Little Liars, like all those things that are based on books, 13 Reasons Why, um, they tend to go beyond the books. And then it's like, well,
Yes.
what the hell am I watching now?
So I think the thing, and maybe you can agree with this, is when it comes to things like that, I think the biggest problem is that in the earlier seasons of shows, they make certain undisclosed promises, right? So Game of Thrones, right? I will say, and I will go on my heart and say that I believe that the first 6 seasons of Game of Thrones, the first four, obviously, I understand they're the books, and I get that, but I did love season 5, and I did love season 6. I really did. Season 6, they really hyped up, though, I think, certain storylines that never really paid off, right? And once again, this has been discussed on tons of YouTube videos, so I'm not going to even begin to take any credit on any of this kind of stuff. But I agree with a lot of what people are saying, where it's like, why did Jon Snow not fight the Night King? This was something that was kind of hyped up in the earlier seasons. I'm not saying that you have to make it unbelievable, but Jon Snow had nothing to do with the Night King. But the Night King was his biggest enemy. It was the revolving thing. And then Arya Stark kills the Night King within 3 seconds. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, like, but the promise of the earlier stuff was built up. And same with, like, I never watched Pretty Little Liars. I never read the books, so I can't speak to that. But like, there are times though where I do find that you can have a success of a TV show and maybe not follow the book as much. Like, I will go to my grave saying that Gossip Girl, the original Gossip Girl, is as good as any show for teen dramas. Like, it's not, obviously it's not realistic, but it's, I know the books are far different than the show, but I didn't mind the directions they took the characters in, because the promises that were started in season 1 ended in season 6. What do you think of that? Like, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think Gossip Girl is one. And like, to be frank, like I watch like a shitload of teen dramas, and like for like a 30-year-old dude, I know that kind of sounds a little weird, but like I
Nah,
I
whatever.
still am like hooked on these like teen drama shows. Like I just finished watching Tell Me Lies. I don't know if you watched that, but it's a newer
Okay.
teen drama
I didn't watch it,
that,
no.
yeah, I would definitely recommend it. I think that's something we should watch and talk about at some point. But yeah, like Gossip Girl stuck the landing. I think like
Mhm.
a show like, even let's say like the OC, like I know the final couple seasons weren't as strong as the first two, but it's still to me like had a satisfying enough ending. Where something like Pretty Little Liars, and I know you don't watch it, and honestly, I probably wouldn't recommend it because it's a lot of seasons and it doesn't stick the landing. The
Mhm.
problem with that is, for the most part, like they do follow the book material. Now, some things are different, like someone might live when they're supposed to die, or vice versa. But the thing that bothers me about a show like Pretty Little Liars, as opposed to a Gossip Girl, is everything that Pretty Little Liars is doing. And I felt this way about Game of Thrones as well, is at the end, it was all for the shock value. It was like, okay, how can we make viewers surprised but but they don't make it make sense. Like they don't let the viewers get to the conclusion. They just throw the conclusion at you. It's like, okay, you
Yeah.
all think Jon Snow is going to kill the Night King, so let's just let Arya do it in the snap of a in the snap of a
Right.
finger.
And then also, like, out of nowhere, oh, you thought, like, Cersei was bad. Wait till Daenerys just pops off. It's just like, but like, it just was so sudden, and it didn't add up. And some people have argued, like, well, if you watch the earlier season, she started to kind of become more maniacal, and but even then, like, I've watched a lot of they really didn't do a good job of that. Uh, when we talk about teen dramas, right? I will go to my grave. You're 30, I'm turning 30. We grew up in the golden era of teen dramas. Like, I don't care what anyone says. I understand the 90s had some shows. Great. The OC, One Tree Hill, Gossip Girl, those three shows
My favorite is
alone,
my favorite is Dawson's Creek,
like,
which was the
iconic.
late 90s, early 2000s. Um, but yeah,
90s.
like all those shows
Yeah,
were
Dawson's
awesome.
Creek, and it's the one of the few I haven't gone into. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And my
Dawson's
whole
Creek.
thing is like,
Oh, go ahead.
no, you sorry, you froze there for a second. Say it again.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, like, Dawson's
No.
Creek
I
to
was saying you
me, like
froze there
that.
for a second.
I think we're like a bit delayed, but all right. So yeah, to me, Dawson's Creek was like the originator in a way where it was like a lot of the stars from that show went on to be in One Tree Hill. Like Chad Michael Murray was on Dawson's Creek,
He
and
was on
then a year
Dawson's.
or
I
two
know. I
later,
know.
yeah, he
Hmm.
goes to One Tree Hill, and he's like the star of One Tree Hill. So yeah, I think that the thing about those shows that I think just did things a little bit better were it felt real while being unrealistic. Like you felt like an emotional attachment to a lot of the characters, like a like when Brooke Davis is getting dumped at the wedding by Lucas Scott, like you're
Right. And you're
feeling that because
yeah.
it's also the boom of like social media and like as fans, like like yeah, she's dating him in real life, and they
Yeah.
broke up in real life.
I know it's
Um,
so awkward.
so
But I mean even in season 2, right? Like I remember watching season 2 when he finally confesses to Brooke, "Hey, like I love you and I want to be with you." And she has to go. You felt the gravitas in that moment. One of the things that I think a lot of teen dramas don't do well anymore is there's no gravitas anymore. It's like, "Oh, he'll just find a new person." And I'll give you an example. I loved Riverdale season 1. I thought Riverdale season 1 was like pretty damn good. And then season 2 came. And then season 3 came and it just completely shit the lane. I don't know what the hell happened there, but it became like parody kind of how bad the writing was on that show. But once again, you brought up a good point of feeling realistic in an unrealistic world, right? I understand the contents of Riverdale are unrealistic, right? But a lot of these teen drama shows, the basis of them for me are the relationships. That's what drives the shows. The plot is there to be the plot. But at the end of the day, we all want Seth Cohen to end up with Summer. We all want Pacey to end up with Joey. We all want, like, that is what we want. This plot is just moving the relationships forward, but we want the relationships going at all times. Nathan and Haley, uh, Brooke and Peyton and Brooke and Lucas, like the triangle as a whole thing. Riverdale, Archie, I think was like he would break up with Veronica and then what's his face? Uh, Cole Sprouse's character. I'm
yeah,
blanking on
Jughead.
it right now. Jughead, yeah, Jughead. You know, where is this going? Like, where is this actually going? And it's just like, at some point, you got to watch it and be like, the relationships are not there. We watched down to you make promises in earlier seasons, and you don't fulfill those promises, you lose the audience. And so that's why I'm surprised like a show like Grey's Anatomy is still on. Because like Grey's Anatomy is like really changed hands like 7 to 25 times. Still going though. My mom loves that
Yeah,
show.
yeah. I think
Hmm.
Riverdale is super interesting because I agree with you. Like season one was like a pretty compelling show. It's like, oh wow, they're taking these old comic books that everyone knows and they're turning it into a murder mystery. Like this is cool. Like this is fun. It makes sense. And then it just like tried so hard to like kind of what I was saying a little bit about Game of Thrones and like a Pretty Little Liars. Like it tried so hard to just be outrageous that it took everything away to a point where like yeah there are the relationships within the show, but then there's like weird creatures and like they're time traveling and there's
Yeah.
witches and it's like this isn't what we were promised in season one. And then it got to a point where I tried to watch it throughout, but it just got so far-fetched and it's like you're no longer feeling anything for the characters. And to me, like Riverdale is like an example of a show where these actors are being like they're uh they're kind of suffering at the hands of the writing and the direction of the
Yeah.
show, where they're just being asked to do a million different things that doesn't make any sense, and there was no plot. And I mentioned Pretty Little Liars a couple times. Like Pretty Little Liars actually came out a few years ago with a spin-off. It was like
Mhm.
in kind of the same universe, but they promised that it would be a horror. It was like it was a teen drama but full horror. Like there was a masked, there was a it was a slasher, people were getting killed, they're trying to figure out who the killer is. I
Got
like
it.
that, so I started watching it. Season 1, not that great, but it got renewed for season 2, and then in season 2 they're promoting it obviously naturally as a slasher. But then season 2 rolls around, and 10 episodes later, nobody died, nobody was killed, there was no slashing for a slasher. And
Yeah.
then it got canceled naturally because people were upset and nobody liked it. And then you
Yeah.
see like the like people on like kids on TikTok, younger people on TikTok and on Instagram, who are attached to the characters because they like pretty things. Like they like things that shine. So you have this really attractive young cast, and people on social media flock to it. But for someone like me that's watching because I
Yeah.
like murder mystery, I like
Yeah.
slashers, I like these kind of dramas, I'm hating it because nothing has happened. Like we ended season 2 in the
Mhm.
exact same spot that season 1 ended. Like literally like season 2 could have not happened, and the ending would have been the exact same. So
Yeah.
for like things like that are just super frustrating for me.
I think that, when we kind of look back at Riverdale, and mind you, there are, and I keep referring this, but if you go on YouTube, you just type in Riverdale, there are extensive video essays on people giving the show its hard time due, because a lot of people did not like where the direction went. I think Riverdale fell into a bunch of problems. One of the biggest was that they went from a 12 episode show into a 22 episode show. And you got to fill 22 episodes now with just mundane shit that, like, no one cares about. Like, you could have made, for me, like, this is the biggest challenge that a lot of, I think, places make. And it kind of circles back to Wicked and all of these kinds of things. I sometimes think less is more. And when you take a movie like Wicked, which probably doesn't have to be two parts. I'm gonna just say I haven't seen the play, but I saw the movie. I didn't think it needed to be two parts. But okay, I'm gonna see what the payoff looks like in the end. Different story. Same thing with a show like, we're talking about great shows and great teen dramas. I think a lot of what makes a great teen drama great is knowing when to cut the wire, knowing what's realistic and what's not. So a show like One Tree Hill, I felt like you could do 22 episodes in a season because there were so many characters and each character had their own plot points and you were kind of invested in them and you cared, and the relationships, once again, which I keep bringing up, were very important, so you cared. You wanted to see what happened. Riverdale started off as 13 episodes and it really was kind of, the characters, they were kind of pretty base level characters. I didn't find any of them too interesting. They were attractive and they were cool to look at, and I think there's a lot of things that they could have done with the show to make it better. um I will never forgive them for screwing up the Southside Serpent storyline. I mean, they could have done so many cool things with that, and they just, like, I don't know, it just went from like this. I just really fell off. And as I said, like, I'm not a writer, so I always try and give writers, like, the benefit of the doubt. But at some point, you also have to ask these studios and be like, dude, like, what the hell happened here? Like, like, well, what
Yeah.
are you like? What notes are you giving
Like
these people? Because you know,
to me, like the best thing about Riverdale early on was like they took a lot of swings that I think hit. Like they made Cheryl, uh, they had her in a same-sex relationship, and I think her
yeah,
relationship with Tony was something that was a highlight of the show. But then in the later seasons, it's like, all right, we're flash forwarding 5 years, and now Tony is married to a man, has a baby on the way. Then there's like time travel, and they're not together anymore. And it's like, all right, you're taking what worked best and you're removing it. Like to me, oftentimes, like I find myself, especially with teen dramas, I often do not gravitate towards the main character. Like I find they're typically like the straight man, like they're not like that exciting. Like Archie's not exciting. Like to me, like Lucas Scott is not as compelling as Nathan or Brooke or Peyton or Haley.
Mhm.
And I think they do that on purpose. Like they want it to just be like this, like kind of like everyday like good guy like Dawson and Dawson's Creek as well. They're not as like they don't bring as much drama. Like that's just their role. Because they want people to like them. But for someone like me that like likes a little bit more messiness, like I like a little bit more of like a complex personality. I
Mhm.
gravitate more towards like the side characters often, and like something like Riverdale, it's like they had great side characters, but
It did.
they didn't know what to do with them. And I mean, Riverdale is like a different story. That like Riverdale to me is just there will never be anything like that again. Like the fact that it
Mm.
lasted like 10 years, like they were having
Yeah,
20 episode seasons.
it's insane.
Um, but I do think like to your point about less is more. I know you're not as big in reality TV.
Mhm.
Reality TV is like my biggest love for TV. And one of the shows I actually do another podcast where I talk about the challenge on
Mhm.
MTV. And a
So is,
problem
is,
that
is
they're
that is that is that
facing.
with Johnny Bananas?
Yeah, so it's like
Okay.
the real world's like we grew up on the real world, and like
Yeah.
all these people went on to do like MTV's The Challenge. Um, and the problem they're facing now is it's been on for 40 seasons, and they used to do like 12 to 15 episode seasons, and they were 40-minute episodes, super compelling. It was a lot about the characters, like their journey over years. And now they do 22 episode seasons, 90-minute episodes, and like they expect you to be as invested, but they're dragging these same storylines over 90 minutes each week
Mhm.
for 6 months at a time. So this current season started in August and it's still going on now, and it's going to end like
Mhm.
close to February. It's just too much. And for something like that, it's like you can only watch the same thing so many times, and then it just gets a little bit repetitive. So I think
Well,
reality TV is a bit of a different ball game, but
reality TV. So here's the thing, and we also grew up. I think I'd say that I grew up with the Real World, and I remember my favorite season of the Real World was probably the Real World LA. And I remember watching that and being like, wow, this is quite compelling shit. I did watch Real World Las Vegas, another really interesting one. And then I kind of stopped off. I think it was Real World. Was it Brooklyn? I think it was somewhere in New York. I just remember that. But the whole thing was that I think, to your point, right? Like you look at a show like Jersey Shore. Okay, Jersey Shore is a pretty simple show, right? It's Italian Americans from from Jersey, or from Staten Island, or just parts of like the New York area, and they go to the Jersey Shore and they live out there, party out there, and a large part of it's personality, right? I went on TV and I didn't like. I sometimes forget that that show's still going on. Like it still is happening. It's like a very popular show to this day, and like I don't. I feel like after season 3, I was like, all right, like what are they gonna do? They're gonna go to a place. They're gonna live there for a bit. They're gonna party. It's probably gonna be a couple fights, and then it's like we're family, and that's it. Like it kind of just felt like it had beats after a while, and it just became less like reality. To all of their credits, the fact that they've all maintained a pretty like popular image post the 2008 2009 bubble of the original Jersey Shore, which I think is very hard to recreate. Um, they've done a good job. Like credit's got to go where credit's got to go. I mean, Snooki, like who would have thought that Snooki would still be talked about to this day? But Jay, she's got a career. Like JWoww, all these people, like they're still going. Um, the challenge though, so the thing with the challenge, I'm curious to hear like your honest opinion, because I know you're a lot more of like a reality TV connoisseur guy than I am. Do you think though that a show like the challenge can afford to shorten? Like that's the quote, because I understand the basis. I've seen the show. My buddy, not my funny, but my buddy actually has a Johnny Bananas tattoo. So that's how much he loves it. He has a tattoo, bananas, and like it's pretty crazy. Johnny Bananas. If you ever watch this, hit me up because I have a friend who would love to get his autograph from you. But um, do you think a show like that can like afford to shorten itself? Like I don't under because that's the thing, right? Like the less I feel like you would stop caring if it wasn't in your face 24/7.
Yeah, well, the thing is about the challenge, it's become like a full universe. So now
Hmm.
it's like you don't get a month without a challenge season being on. So like right now, season 40 is on. The week season 40 ends, they're airing a spinoff called Challenge All Stars 4, which is a shortened season. So it'll be about 12 episodes. And they bring back like more older players. But
Hmm.
the thing is, it all intersects. So now they also have like a USA version where it's on CBS, and then they have
Mm.
all these other versions. So the universe of the challenge, it just goes on forever, and
The challenge universe.
it makes the individual seasons matter less.
Mm.
So you can't like
So sorry to
decipher
cut you
it.
off. I wonder what's made more money, the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the Challenge Universe? That's something we have to.
Oh, I would
I
guarantee you
want to
the
Google.
Marvel.
I want to Google that after.
Yeah, so it's like
Excuse
the
me. Sorry about
the
that.
problem with the problem I find with the challenge right now is they cast the same people basically every year. So it's like you and I are friends. We go on a season together, and then the season ends, and then 2 weeks later we go on another season, and we're still friends. So our storyline is basically going to be the same unless we get in a fight or whatever, or a a woman gets in between us, and like
Mhm.
that's the only way that you and I aren't working together. So you see
Yes.
these people do 5 seasons in a row, and the same five, six, seven, 8 people make it to the end the next for 5 seasons in a row because they're still friends. So
Mhm.
they need to do a better job. I think a show like that where it relies on previous contestants has to do a better job of casting from a deeper pool. So they can't just have eight people on one season and then the same 8 people on the next season and then throw like 5 rookies in there because then the rookies get picked off by the eight.
Right.
Um, it's tough. Like reality TV is in an interesting spot, and I do think reality TV is making like a big comeback as well. But
Mhm.
some of the shows that have been on forever, like Challenge, Big Brother, Survivor, are struggling a little bit because I do think people are realizing it is getting very repetitive. But like, I don't know if you ever watched The Traders, like a Peacock show.
No, I
Um,
never got around to that one.
yeah, Traders is a really fun show. It kind of takes ideas from all these shows like The Challenge, where they're going to put 15 people from different reality shows, like 15 people from the biggest names in reality TV, and even like some sports people, and they put them in a mansion and they
Okay.
vote each other out. And
Okay.
it's like a game of mafia, essentially. It's like a game of deception and trying to like discover who's the bad guy and who's the good guys. um, and it's working really well, and people want to do the show. But with a show like The Challenge, it's been on so long, people don't really want to do it anymore, so they're stuck casting the
The
same
same.
people that will say yes to
Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, it's also probably a nice little paycheck, and these people, and this is not a slight on them, by the way, but they're probably known as like, hey, yeah, you're from the challenge now. Like that's who you like.
Yeah.
It's their career, as whether or not we, I get that. I'm not shaming anyone for it, by the way. Like if you're someone who makes their money off the challenge, and you're like, hey, listen, I got fucking bills to pay. Like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? But just I can understand from the third party, aka you, or even me, the challenge season 55. Like I'm like, all right, well, I'm not gonna watch the 55 seasons. Like, it's too far
Yeah.
gone now. You're either there on the ground floor or you're not. And it's because it's by the sounds of it, it's the same kind of characters pretty frequently, from what I understand. It's like you either love it or you don't. It's just there's no kind of in between. But I did
Yeah.
want I did kind of want to shift from like reality TV because you're a pretty big TV guy, and I was kind of curious. Like, did you have a show of the year? Like, did you have like a show that you were like 2024? Like, this was the show of the year? Because I thought that
Uh,
Penguin. was like fucking chef's kiss. 10 out, like
Yeah.
for I'm talking new TV shows. I mean, you can count a season if you want to. I'm not one of those people who's nitpicky. If it's a good season, it's a good season. I mean, I saw. Did you get around to Squid Game season 2 yet?
Yeah, so I watched Squid Games. I did think season two obviously it wasn't as good as season one. Like I'm not going to like pretend that it was, but I did still think it was a pretty strong sequel season.
Yeah.
Um, I don't love like it did feel like they were splitting it up. I don't know if that was the show you were
Yeah,
referring to
that's
where they
that
split it
was the
up.
show I was referring to earlier in the pod. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do agree. Like I would rather they just have it all done at once because like clearly, I mean, it's coming in like 6 months. I think they said it's coming in May or June.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank goodness, by the
so
way.
I don't I did still overall like it. I'm trying to think like other shows that I watched. I think I don't know, like this show I told you about a little I name dropped like Tell Me Lies. I think like
Yeah.
for a teen drama, it's like very good. It like
Hmm.
explores more like the like toxic like it's more like college based. So
Yeah.
it's like a lot of like toxic relationships in your early 20s
Okay.
and
I might
it's
have
like
to watch the
very
show.
dark too.
I might have to watch the show.
Yeah, I think you should, honestly. It's like a
Mhm.
quick watch. There's 18 episodes total. It's like it's kind of like it's basically like if a show like One Tree Hill or any of those other shows was on HBO. So there's like
Got it.
it's way more inappropriate.
Hmm.
There's like it's like more explicit. There's swearing, there's nudity. It's older people. So like for people like us, like we might relate to it a little bit more because like we're only 7, 8 years away from their age range instead of like 15. But I think it's a really good watch there. I'm trying to
Mm.
think other
If
some other shows.
yeah, I will say, Industry season 3 was pretty top. That's a show, by the way, for those who don't know. I highly recommend it. It's 3 seasons. It's about it's essentially about like an the young business professionals in the UK. It's not a long show. It's as I said, it's only 3 seasons, 12 episodes a season. But the stuff that goes on in the finance world, obviously, you see a lot of things that you probably have heard of, and probably stuff that does happen on a higher scale that we're not even aware of. But very fascinating stuff to watch. And I thought season 3, I know they're coming out with another season, from what I understand. But if they ended it off here, I'd be like, cool, like great, just leave it here. Um, we'll see what they do. But for me, The Penguin was the best show I saw in 2024. And the reason being was one, I'm a big comic book guy. I love comic book movies, comic book stories. And I did really enjoy The Batman by Matt Reeves, who's the creator and director of The Penguin. Uh, Colin obviously won the Golden Globe last night for his performance. So I don't even have to go into the performance because I think that, it's just going to speak for itself. Anyone who wants to watch it, they'll be able to just be like, yeah, this guy's a fucking maestro at acting. But even then, the story, the overlying thing, the show is very good at doing this thing where it makes you care about this guy, and then it reminds you why you hate this guy. And that's a very powerful thing, right? And so it's this show, as I said, you see this guy, he has a disability, he has like physical ailments. He's clearly not an attractive guy, but you feel for him. You feel like his heart's in the right place. And then and he's doing bad things, by the way, while this is going on. You want him to win because you sympathize with him. And then the show does this thing where it reminds you, no, this is actually a bad guy. You don't he's been fucking with you this whole time. You don't want him to win. And you find that out at the end of the show. It's only 8 episodes, so if you get a chance, I highly recommend it. I'd say watch The Batman first. It's a good movie. And then watch this. It's, incredible. And kudos to that team. I mean, they, as I said, Colin deserved the Golden Globe 100%. And I don't think anyone would disagree with that because he was truly fucking awesome. Um, but I mean, luckily for us, we don't just have sports and reality TV because we have something just as important right now. Because even when it's not TV time or movie time, we have something that's actually, at least in my opinion, just as important, sports. And, you know, I know that we talk a lot about pop culture on our thing. We love pop culture, but I also thoroughly enjoy talking about sports and the pop culture with that. Can you just remind me, just so that, maybe people are familiar? I'm going to ask you the big four North American sports. I'm not going to ask you every sport in the world. We'll get to those as time goes on. What's your favorite basketball team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Toronto. I'm a Raptors fan, like first and foremost. So yeah, definitely Raptors are my basketball team, and I believe you're the same.
Mhm. Yeah, so my basketball team, obviously Raptors, Toronto boys. Hockey, we're probably going to agree on the same thing. Maybe I don't know about you, but I'm a Leafs fan.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
funny enough, like hockey is the one sport I just don't really care about, and
Mhm.
being like Canadian, it's like kind of weird because like growing up, everyone I knew played hockey, watched hockey, and I just don't really care about it. Like I would say if I had to cheer for a team, certainly it would be the Leafs, but whether they win or lose, like I really don't care.
I think that may be part of the reason why, and you can agree with this. And maybe I think, and it's. I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's not a big hockey guy. Hockey does not do a good job of building up storylines like the other sports do. The other sports build a storyline around a central figure or around a team, and you rally around that team. Hockey, it doesn't do that as often, so I find that a lot of people don't really get involved. And unless you watch hockey, they actually do it now more so than they did in the past. And when we were growing up, they really pushed like the Sidney Crosby Ovechkin rivalry. That was a big storyline. And now we're kind of in this new era of like just these skill players and Connor McDavid being the best player arguably ever. And you have Austin Matthews and you have, as I said, all these kind of generational talents that are just insane, and they're all playing at the same time, which is awesome for us. But we'll get back to that after. Um, Baseball. What's your team?
I mean, again, like Toronto, I gotta ride 'em through thick and thin. I gotta stick with the Blue Jays, unfortunately. I know
So
it's not a great time
this
for that,
is
but
yeah, this is where this is our first disagreement, which you'll start to notice we disagree, especially in sports, on a lot of things.
oh, well, we're gonna get to our biggest disagreement.
Let's
I
go.
imagine right after that.
Yeah, let's go Yankees. I am a New York Yankees fan. You know, look, I'm from Toronto. Don't get me wrong, I get it. I get it. And I also want to make this clear, by the way. I know people are going to disagree with this. If you're from a city and your team, like your city's doing good, there's no harm in being like, that's cool. You can be objectively happy for them. But I am a Yankees fan. I've been a Yankees fan for the last decade. I was never a baseball guy. The first baseball game I really kind of saw and understood was at Yankee Stadium. Awesome experience, and I just kind of felt like, okay, this feels right. Um, I'd been to some Jays games before when I was younger, but didn't really care for baseball as a sport. But love the Yankees, and now comes probably the biggest contentious talking point in our friendship. If you think about it, we've been friends now for almost a decade, and this has been a thing that's ended conversations. It's led to walkouts. It's led to people having, very strong opinions. It's led to me having trust issues with you and not knowing if you're genuine. What's your team? Why don't you tell the fans what your team is?
Yeah, so I think both of our, well, at least my favorite sport, I think your favorite sport too, is
Yeah.
football.
Yeah.
NFL to me is, as someone that loves reality TV, the NFL is the greatest reality TV show on earth. It's like no matter what time of year, you can enjoy the NFL. Like there is storylines every single day. There's 365 days. There are storylines in the NFL. So I will any time of year pull up my phone and get NFL news, and I follow it as if it is my favorite TV show. Uh, the NFL is the greatest, and I am a New England Patriots fan.
Wow.
Which,
Wow.
funny enough, that my dad is a Buffalo Bills fan. Being in Toronto, we're just a couple hours out of Buffalo, so you do see a lot of people in Toronto are fans of Buffalo. When I was growing up, I, for two reasons, started to love the Patriots. One, they were winning, they were very good. And as I'm starting to watch football, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this team in the playoffs every year. I'm getting hooked on it. So I become a Patriots fan. And then also, like, my dad was a diehard Bills fan. So I kind of wanted, like, screw you, dad.
Yeah, it
Um,
was like your rebel
and I
moment.
went so I went to the team that was constantly like beating his ass every year. And obviously we had some good years, and the last few years not so much. But yeah, I mean, when you and I started to be friends, the Patriots were certainly doing quite well. I know the Jets took them down once or twice, and you had a laugh there. But for the most
Yeah.
part,
So
Patriots, I think, won 3 Super Bowls since we've been friends. But
yeah, so for those who are aware, and I think Matt, you did a good job of kind of explaining. Being from Toronto, I'd say the majority of the city's a Buffalo Bills. This is a Buffalo Bills territory fan base, and I get that we're close to Buffalo. Um, the I think the other closest city to us is Detroit, and God bless them this year. They've been fantastic, but in prior years, Detroit has never been a Super Bowl contending team, really ever. I think this is really the first year where I'm like, they might actually do it. But the Bills in the '90s, they went to 4 Super Bowls. They didn't win any of them. So, it's one thing to go, and I'm happy for you Bills fans, but you didn't win, so calm down. Um, Bit of backstory: my parents are not from Canada; they are from another country. So when they came to North America, a lot of my sports opinions had to be formed by myself because they just didn't understand it. It just wasn't something they really got. And when we went to summer camp together, my first year, because that's how Matt and I met, I wasn't even really a football fan. I wasn't even really a sports fan. I became a sports fan later in life. Um, but I knew that I liked certain things. The first football game I ever saw were the Colts versus the Bears, Super Bowl game, and I thought, okay, well maybe I like the Colts. I thought, man, I like Peyton Manning. God love Peyton Manning, and I've defended him on numerous of occasions, but not a lot of winning was done in the postseason, and it didn't catch my attention the way that I think I wanted it to. And I went to summer camp that summer and we were picking fantasy football teams, and I didn't know much about anything really. And my good friend at the time was a Jets fan. And he said, "Hey, we just went to the AFC Championship game. Second year in a row, by the way. And you should join the fan base." And I was thinking, you know what? Aaron Rodgers had just, won his Super Bowl. I was thinking maybe Packers. I knew that a lot of the people, minus you, that were Patriot fans were a little d-baggy. A little
pieces
bit
of
of a
shit.
d-bag. There's a little bit there's a little bit of a d-bag mentality. It's like, oh, and mind you, they hadn't won three super, like they hadn't won the six. They'd only won the three, but we were young and shit. So like it wasn't, I thought maybe Brady had another 2 years in him, and every year Brady was doubted, and we'll get to that after because that man. We'll get to him in a bit, but point being, I got home from camp that summer, and I was watching HBO, and they had a documentary on Joe Namath, and just the whole vibe of New York and just being in a thing, and I don't know, just something about it just clicked, and I have been a Jets fan since 2010, and it's probably not a good thing because we have not gone to the playoffs since I've been a fan of the Jets, and every year it gets worse and worse. This season, an absolute joke, made me sick to my stomach. Every week really made me sick to my stomach. I had to leave the television, go to the washroom, just have a little talk with myself in the mirror, and go back because it was a bad season. It was a bad season. I know that you think your season was bad. Here's the difference: you didn't have any expectations. Like, say what you want about the Patriots. Yeah, okay, first time head coach, which we'll get into because I don't agree with the firing. First time head coach. The team, for the most part, is kind of in a bit of a shamble spot. They don't really have a strong roster. They have cool pieces here and there, but nothing that really excites anyone. And rookie quarterback, you have another quarterback who's, obviously just trying to keep the wheels on this thing, and they're not doing a good job of it, obviously. So, here comes this Patriots team, and you know what? To their credit, I didn't think they were going to win 2 games, but they won more than 2 games, so that's impressive. But here's the difference: we had Aaron Rodgers, we had Adams, we had the Green Bay Packers from 2 years ago who went to the playoff, went to the NFC Championship game, and we went 5-13. So just a disgusting season, another season of shit. I mean, every year it just gets worse. It's like, and at this point, it's like a comedy show. Like, I love comedies just as much as I love horrors. It's just like, if you like to laugh, like, just be a Jets fan like me. You'll laugh through your pain. Yeah,
Oh, and I mean that is like the best thing about football. And like to my point about it being the greatest reality TV show, it's the greatest show in general. It's you can laugh, you can cry, you can be scared, uh, you have hope. It's you have a million different feelings throughout a calendar year from one team. Like you start the
right.
year believing like Aaron Rodgers is going to come back and he's going to do it. And
He's gonna
then
lead us.
2, 3 weeks in, you're like, oh, this isn't going so well. But then like one win changes things. And it's like, oh, now we're going to go get Devontae Adams and
Yeah.
he is going to bring the Rodgers we know back. And then it never happens. But as disappointing as it is the most entertaining thing because you turn on the TV and people are talking about it. You open your
And
phone, people are talking about it.
mhm. Well, I think, and this is the one thing about football, right? And I think this is why football, is king in maybe North America. I can't speak for, like, obviously Europe and Mexico, because I understand football, as they call it there, is a little more whatever. But the biggest benefit football has is that it's one game a week on Sundays, Mondays, or a Thursday. Sometimes a Saturday or a Friday, but it's Monday, Thursday, Sunday. Those are the days that we know. It's 17 weeks, playoffs, one game each time. That's it. There's no series. It's not 82 games. It's not 160 plus games. You're looking, it's like every single game has gravitas. Every single game has something. And if you're not pushing constantly, if you're not winning, you can go on a 5 game win streak to start the season and then lose every game after that. Just off one thing. One missed field goal can change the entire trajectory of your team. And remember, it's not 82 games, so you can't fix it. And you're not playing multiple times a week. You're playing one time a week, and you have to fix it week by week by week by week until it's as perfect as you can make it. And I think that's why, for me, football's my favorite sport. I don't know about you. Like, I know it's your favorite sport, but for me, I just love the fact that it's just once a week, everything on the line, and that's it. Nothing else. There's no, it's not like you're down. And don't get me wrong, I do love, like, the 7 game series for the sports that they're involved in, because I think that it's a bit of a different sport. Like basketball, a cool comeback in a series is always awesome. Same with baseball. Baseball had the best postseason of the last 10 years, in my opinion. But football, every single playoff game that we're going to watch from now on, that's it. And anything can happen. Anything.
Oh yeah. I mean the beautiful thing about football is not only can anything happen, but everything matters. And even before you step on the field, like to your point, it's like it's one game a week, but like a coach on Tuesday, if they see something on film and they identify something, it's like a game of chess. Like you're
Right.
identifying things 5 days before the game, and that one thing you identify, Belichick
Yeah.
against Seattle in the Super Bowl, that he identified a way that Seattle was lined up, and on the last play of the game, he goal line situation, he throws an extra cornerback on the field, Malcolm Butler, and
Yeah.
says, "Hey, Brandon Browner, you're going to jam him at the line of scrimmage. And Butler, you're going to undercut the route because we saw this in film 5 days before." And little things like that you would never think of when you're playing Madden or in any other sport, you would never think of those little details. They matter so much. And that's like the beauty of football. It's not only, and to my point earlier about 365 days mattering, it's so true because the scouting you do of college players
Right.
ultimately could be the difference of you winning in February. The general managers like surveying the league to try to do a trade up to get Patrick Mahomes. If you're Kansas City, you trade
Right.
up 15 spots. You take a quarterback that's seemingly super raw, but you see something in him, and that changes the lives of thousands of people in the
Well,
organization for the next
well,
20 years.
not only just the organization, the city of Kansas
Fan.
City.
Yeah.
Like, just take that like prior to Patrick Mahomes, right? And mind you, Kansas City, I've never been. It's a place I'd love to check out one day because I've been told it's awesome. But Kansas City is one of those places where they had the Royals, and the Royals won a World Series, which was awesome. Good for them. You know, they beat my Jays. You know, they beat, they've beaten so many great teams. The Royals are just nasty. But point being, they like football, as we keep kind of saying, is king. And so you don't just have a team, you have a dynasty now. And it's probably done so much for the economy in Kansas City. I can't even imagine. But when your football team is winning, right? And I've been in a city where a football team is winning. Like I haven't lived there, but I've been around. You feel it. You see it everywhere. It's in every store. It's in everything. It brings the entire community up. And more so than really any other sport. Like, I mean, the Raptors won the championship, and I loved when the Raptors won the championship. It was special, really, to see a championship winning team. But when I look at these Super Bowl celebrations, it's like that times 10. Like, yeah, like it's like when the Raptors won times 10. It's like it's insanity. So, I mean, to kind of, stop loving football as much as we do, I watched all the games or as many as I could yesterday. It was shit on a lot of ends for both of our teams. Where did this Joe Milton guy come from? Why was he not starting every game for the Patriots? This guy looked incredible. Where was this guy?
Well, here's my big like yeah, he looked great, and I would be thrilled if he's the backup quarterback for the next 5 years. Now, my problem is the ownership of the Patriots, Robert Kraft, the front office. They know they're going to fire the coach, and why why did they let the coaches play this unknown rookie quarterback that could easily perform well against second and third stringers that Buffalo was playing? If you want that first pick and you're going to pull your starters, you have to play Jacoby Brissett, who's sitting right there, who can't move anymore. He can't throw more than 10 yards down the field. But instead, they allow the coaches that are about to be fired to play this unknown who just dominated, albeit again, against backup. So I'm not going to go too overboard and say this guy is like the next best thing, but it's just like there's no game tape on him. So he can win a game against backups. Jacoby Brissett is not winning a game against anyone. And they gave up the opportunity to have that first pick and trade that pick for future assets, which is really frustrating. But I know you said you disagree with the firing of Mayo, and I disagree with you. I think they had to get rid of him. I think it was a massive mistake to hire him to begin with. And I'm the kind of I'm the kind of person where I look at it as, all right, if he's most likely going to be fired next year anyways, just do it now so your young quarterback doesn't have to learn a new system next year. Like the rookie year was a wash. Let him get a real coach in, which
Mhm.
they're going to get Mike Vrabel.
He's going to the
I
Jets. Nice try,
guarantee.
buddy. I guarantee
No,
you he's
there's
a
no
Jet.
way.
I guarantee you he's a Jet. He's not going to the Patriots. If any, like, so
Well,
here's, sorry to cut you off, but here's what I'll say. Okay, I don't agree with firing a head coach in the first year, especially when your team is as depleted as the New England Patriots. Because to me, what you've done, and it's not the Patriots who do this too. A lot of teams do this. Um, what you've done is you've essentially sent in a guy to commit career suicide because you're inefficient at your job. And that's my problem with it. If it was a case, so and I'll kind of go more into detail. Uh, I'll never forget when the Browns got Baker Mayfield. They fired. I forget. I don't know if he got fired or he moved on. I think it was. I think it was Kevin. Was it Kevin? It was. I forget who it was, but they hired the head coach, who was the offensive coordinator. I think it was Freddie Gibbs. That was his name.
Freddie
And
Kitchen.
Freddie Kitchens. Sorry, why am I saying Freddie Gibbs? Freddie Gibbs is a musician, I think. But Freddie Kitchens. You're right. And here's a team that is good. Like on paper, they are good. They have a lot of pieces. They have, they had a winning season the season before. There was a lot of excitement. And Freddie Kitchens did not do a good job. So you fire him. Fine. The next year they hire a new coach, Stefanski. Things turn around, they go to the playoffs. You get the story. I can be okay with that firing because the team was at the very, everyone had done their job except the coach. Right? You have a rookie quarterback. You have a very bad defense. You do not have a good offense. You have no weapons. I don't know who they even threw to half the time. I did not know any wide receiver on the Patriots. Mind you, the Patriots have never been a wide receiver friendly team. Like I know they had Randy Moss and they had Jules and they had Gronk, but Gronk's a tight end and Jules was a slot guy. Amendola and nightmares just come back. But anyways, you look at Gerard Mayo, you throw this guy in, you say, hey, here's a really shit team. I want you to bring the best out of them. And you're not going to make the playoffs. Like you and I both know we're not making the playoffs here. But let's see what you could do. You give him a 1 year. And now you're saying, oh, well, we shot the bed because the coaching was bad. No. Gerard Mayo did not need to get fired for that. Right? I don't think that Gerard Mayo should have dealt with that kind of stuff. I don't even think that the Patriots are even going to get Vrabel. I think the reason why they're doing that is because they're trying to go after Aaron Glenn. But even if they got Vrabel, even if they get Aaron Glenn, there are massive holes on that football team. It's not like you're going to just hire this guy and now they're all of a sudden going to be good. It's going to take some time. So what? Let's just say Vrabel has a worse season. What if the team finishes now 2 and whatever? Is it the coach's fault still?
So
well, the team's, if you make no changes.
The thing is, I get your point, and in most cases, I would agree. Like, nobody thought New England was going to be good this year. The issue is New England, and you're definitely right. Their receivers suck, their O-line sucks, their defense sucks, but their defense the year before did not suck. Their offense was horrible. Their defense was very good last year. They were losing games like 13-6 or 10-0. Like they were playing dominant defense. I know, and it was Belichick, who is one of the best defensive minds ever. But Gerard Mayo is a defensive coach. He wasn't lacking talent on the defensive side of the ball. Like Christian Gonzalez, who was out all of last year, was playing all of this year, and he was one of the better cornerbacks in the league. And their defense not only declined, their defense was a complete joke. And even that, I don't think is enough to fire a coach after 1 year. But offensively, they should have been better than they were the year before. Drake May looked good for the most part. The rest of their offense looked horrible for the most part. But the thing that really made me want to get rid of Mayo, even after 1 year, was he lost the locker room. Like the players were not happy, coaches were not happy, no fans were not happy, certainly. And it wasn't because they were losing, it's because nothing was improving. So on defense, on offense, offensive line, pass defense, rush defense, no matter what, special teams, nothing had improved. And not only that, but Gerard Mayo he didn't know how to communicate with the media. And a lot of that is because he was a first year coach and he probably wasn't expecting to be a coach for another 2-3 years. But at the end of the day, like being a head coach in the NFL requires a lot of having a positive relationship with fans and media. And you can tank that very quickly. I mean, look at like this is at an extreme, but like Urban Meyer a couple of years ago, he got so hated
Yeah,
that they
yeah.
had to let him go. Gerard Mayo is not hated, but people looked at him as like he was kind of a joke. Like he was in over his head. And I would
Mhm.
rather just cut ties early than have to go like another year. Like if they think like, yeah, the damage is done, just get rid of him now, get in a proven guy. I do think it will be Vrabel. Like I'd honestly be a little shocked if it wasn't. And Vrabel is just the kind of guy, like he's like a no nonsense guy. Like
Yeah.
get he's not going to get pushed around by media. He's not going to let fans chants and screams like get to his head, and he's not
Mhm.
going to take shit from the players. Like he's going to solidify the locker room, and it's going to be like he's going to bring back the Patriot way. And I just saw nothing from Mayo that indicated he was capable of doing that.
So, first things first, classic Patriots move, just having to snake the Jets for their coach. Happened one time, a long time ago. There was a man by the name of Bill Belichick, and he was a Jets coach. And then the Patriots called, and then he was the Patriots coach, and that led to a lot of pain. Once again, same thing. It's gonna watch. History repeats itself. You're gonna probably get Vrabel, which breaks my heart, but I'm fine with Aaron Glenn. I'll take Aaron Glenn happily. But in all seriousness, you look at a team, for example, like the Jets, right? The Patriots and the Jets are this season in particular are two of the more interesting teams. You have a team with nothing to really prove and loses naturally because they're not very good. And then you have a team with everything to prove and loses and sucks. And, we can kind of keep going back to coaching and the way that a team's built. But to me, a lot more pressure should always be on the GM than the coach. I understand that the coach as the formula, I get all that stuff. Believe me, I do. Maybe this is my stupidity as a person who's never been in an NFL organization, and I could also be the first to admit that. But you need to build a team, right? But the GM is, as I said, the GM to me is kind of like the CEO of the football team. You're building a culture, you're building a team. You and the coach have to work together to do that. Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh tried to build something, and it was a wet fart. Let's just call it what it is. Was not good. The Patriots, I don't really think they tried to build anything. So it's like I would looked at the Patriots as I said this year, and like once again, they did not do anything this year where I was like, wow, like that was actually very innovative and different, or that's the Patriots that I hate but I respect. It was to me they just didn't do it. Like the Drake May draft, cool, great, loved it.
Well, the
Throwing
thing
him
is, like
in,
Drake May, they like I can't even give them credit for it because he fell into their laps. Like
he
they were
did, he
going to
did.
take whichever of the three quarterbacks was there, and he was the one that was there. And unsurprisingly, he's good. He's he's a good young quarterback. Jaden
Yeah,
Daniels, like if he fell, we would have taken him too, and he is good as well. If Caleb Williams fell, I mean, he does not look that good right now, but he
I
would have
mean he's
come
in
to New England,
Chicago.
and
Within fairness,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
I don't think Eberflus was the guy for the job for that kind of a team. I think Eberflus, and I also want to make this clear too, right? Sometimes there are people who are just great coordinators, but not great head coaches. I'm not going to go that far in Eberflus because this was his first run, obviously. But there are people historically, right? Like you know, that have been, as I said, just outstanding coordinators. But when
yeah,
it
Josh
comes to
McDaniels,
running a
big one.
team, Josh McDaniels, Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh to me is a great coordinator. I don't care what anyone says. He is a great coordinator. I don't know if he's a great head coach. He's, I get that people love him. I'm not saying that it's great to love your coach and power to them. There's more to it though. What I will say though is that, a lot of people are kind of hoisting this, and I kind of wanted to end it off here. What is your Super Bowl prediction? where we're at today. Who do you think's going to the Super Bowl, and who do you think's winning it?
Okay, well, I'm going to quickly go through what I think in general what's going to happen in the playoffs. I like, okay, AFC, let's go AFC first.
Sure.
I think AFC is a little bit more straightforward. I think the Chargers will beat the Texans. I just don't think the Texans have it. I think Baltimore beats Pittsburgh pretty easily. Pittsburgh, I just don't think can score with Baltimore. And then we've got Buffalo should definitely beat Denver. I do think Denver's been impressive, but I think Buffalo will take that pretty easily. And then we got Chargers versus the Chiefs in the second round. I mean, you have to assume the Chiefs will pull it off. And then Baltimore and Buffalo is where it gets interesting. It will be in Buffalo, but I personally think this is Lamar's year. He's won 2 MVPs back to back. I think Baltimore is the kind of team where, if healthy, of course, like they can just run right down your throat. So that I don't think the cold weather is going to bother them.
No.
So I actually
Baltimore's just
think
as cold.
I think Baltimore is going to go into Buffalo and win.
Okay.
And I actually think Baltimore is going to send Casey home as well. And I think Baltimore will go to the Super Bowl for the AFC. And then I'll do NFC and then I'll let you go. NFC, we got Pittsburgh and Green Bay. I think Philly and Green
Yeah, I
Bay.
was
I
about
think
to say, I was like, yeah.
Philly, I think Philly should have enough to, if Hurts plays, which I assume he will, I think
Mhm.
Philly takes that. Tampa versus Washington. Give me Tampa. And that'll be high scoring. That should be a fun game. But I think Tampa,
That's gonna be the game that everyone wants to watch. I don't care what anyone says. I think that's gonna
yeah.
be.
I just think like rookie quarterbacks like tend to struggle in the playoffs.
Mhm.
Um, and then we have the Rams against the Vikings, which I think should be a good game as well. I will take the Vikings. I just think they have a little bit more on the defensive side. Although the Rams defense has been playing well. That's a toss up. I'll go Vikings. And then we would have the Vikings against the Lions. I think the Lions, I mean, we just saw like they just score way too much against anyone.
Yeah.
Um, and then Tampa against Philly. I I think Tampa beat Philly last year, right? Or did they beat Philly last year in the playoffs?
I'm forgetting, to be honest. No, because I don't think Tampa made the playoffs last year, did they?
No, they did. Tampa made the second round, I believe.
Who beat
They beat
Philly?
someone.
It might have been Philly actually, because I remember Philly was out early.
Yeah, Philly lost first round. I think it was against Tampa, but you know what? I'm going to say Tampa beats Philly again. I
Okay.
like Tampa, just their ability to score, and then I will take Detroit. I think like Detroit should get a little bit healthier on defense. So give me, I like Super Bowl Baltimore against Detroit, and again, like I think it's Lamar's year. I think he's not going to win MVP, and I kind of think he deserves it. I know that's going to be like a big debate too the next few weeks.
I was gonna ask you, yeah, which we'll get to in a second, because I'm gonna kind of list them off in a second, but I'll
Yeah, so
go on. Yeah.
I think typically MVPs don't win the Super Bowl, so I feel like Lamar, like knowing he's probably not gonna get MVP when he deserves it, it's gonna be like enough to propel him over Buffalo, over KC, against Detroit, and like if they do pull that off, like that's an epic run because they're beating 3 of the top 4 teams essentially.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, you know what? Right now I'm going to say Baltimore against over Detroit. But
Yeah.
let's hear yours.
So I have seen a lot of football this year. I have to get a bucket because I have to throw up while I say this. Just because it makes me sick to my stomach. It's just truly sick to my stomach that I even have to say this. But um, I think that in terms of MVP, I think Josh Allen deserves it, and I think he's going to win it. It took everything, by the way, for those watching, for me to not take the bucket and throw up in when I said that. No disrespect to Allen. I think he's a great guy, great quarterback. I hate the Bills, man. I hate them so much. I don't hate, like, it's funny. I used to hate the Patriots the most, but at least the Patriots won stuff, right? Like, at least I could be like, all right, here we go. Like, all right, they won the Super Bowl. Like, I could talk shit, but the Bills have never won anything, and they make it seem like they've won 95 Super Bowls. Um, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I am telling you right now, I think Denver might beat the Bills. It's a bold call, but the reason why I say that is because I've seen Buffalo's defense, and they don't impress me.
No.
Buffalo's offense, I understand Josh Allen. Don't get me wrong. I think he'll have a good game. But Buffalo's defense in 2 back-to-back weeks let up 40 plus points each week. Their second tiers just lost to New England, which is okay, fine, whatever. But that's still a punch to the face. And you're relying very much on offensive football. People are forgetting how good Denver's defense is, how good Pat Surtain is, how good that team is. The only reason why I think they're going to struggle, like you said, rookie quarterback, but Bo Nix has some spice in him. I like the spice that I see from Bo Nix. I think it's not as guaranteed as people say it is. I'm going to say that the Broncos are going to beat the Bills. I'm going to call it out now. It is my one upset that I believe is going to happen. Now, in terms of the Super Bowl, I'm not going to go as in depth week by week and so on and so forth. Just from what I've seen, I agree with you that if Minnesota goes and advances, I just think Detroit has their number. It just happens sometimes. Sometimes you can have the best team in the world. Just a team has your number. It happens. It's no big issue. I think Detroit versus Baltimore, I would agree with you. This is the year, but I think Detroit's going to take it. I just think as an overall team, they're just so solid. Not taking away anything from Baltimore, by the way, because I actually think that Baltimore's defense is being heavily slept on. They are good
Yeah.
and they are
They've
scary.
improved a lot over the
Yeah,
year. Because they started off
pretty
pretty
rocky.
shitty, but
Yeah,
they've
and
really like the last 2 3 months have been pretty lights out.
yeah, and it's tough too, right? Because when and I think a large part of Baltimore's success is going to be if Zay is good to go. If Zay is good to go, I think they have the best chance to win it. I think that this is the year that Baltimore goes over the hump, but I just don't think that Baltimore is going to beat Detroit because Detroit has something that Baltimore doesn't. Dan Campbell. And I think that
Yeah.
Dan Campbell as a head coach just has the best pulse on his team, and you can see it in the way that they play. They play his style of football. They play Dan Campbell football. It's hard nosed. What he's done with that organization is nothing short of incredible, like truly incredible stuff. And I mean, the only team that I honestly can see giving them a challenge if they face off is the Eagles. That's it. I don't see any other team giving them any challenges. I think the Eagles this year are the team that's going to give them the challenge, if that at all.
Do you mean in the NFC or
In the
overall?
NFC, in the NFC,
Yeah.
in the NFC, yeah. But
Yeah.
aside from
I
that,
think
I don't see any NFC team beating them.
yeah, I agree because I think the thing I like about Baltimore, which is similar to the Eagles, is no matter the conditions, they have like that double, like two-headed monster just running the ball right at
Right.
you. And you can't like focus all your attention on Derrick Henry or Barkley because their quarterbacks are so good at running the ball. Lamar is obviously like a speed demon.
Yeah.
Hurts like a little bit more like thickness to him, but they have that ability to just run at you. And Detroit's got a lot of injuries on defense. Like they can
Yeah.
be run on. So
Yes.
if a team is going to beat them, they're going to beat them by
Running
keeping
that
the
ball.
ball out of Detroit's hands and just running right at
Yeah.
them.
Right.
And
And like
I do think the
Minnesota,
Eagles
like
could do it.
right, like I mean, like that's the thing, right? Minnesota, and God love Sam Darnold, but I mean, I didn't find their rushing attack yesterday that good. Like they didn't really run the ball that well against them.
Hmm.
And I find that Minnesota is a pass first team. They're not a run first team. Um, look, it's a back and forth. But I just think that, as I said, if it's the Lions versus the Vikings, the Lions just have their number. That's it. It's the
Yeah.
same thing like when the Jets and the Patriots would play. All those years, the Patriots just had the Jets. They had everyone's number, really. But they just had, or like when Manning and Brady would go at it. It took a lot. It started off that Brady always had Manning's number, and then towards the end it became a little more even. But sometimes just a team has your number, and that's just the luck of the draw. You know what I mean?
And I think that's kind of what we're waiting for, and definitely in the AFC. It's like,
Mhm.
when is Lamar or Josh Allen gonna beat
Beat
Mahomes?
Mahomes.
When eventually it
It's
will
so hard.
happen. It has to, but
It's tricky too, right? Because the thing with the Chiefs, and this is how good the Chiefs are. The Chiefs have not played well this year. They've played pretty dog shit, and they have the
yeah,
first round bye. Like they
yeah.
won every
They
game by
lost
like a
one
field.
game.
Yeah, well, I mean they lost, but I don't really count that as like a.
Yeah, well, they lost one real game.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, Carson Wentz, my buddy. If this is your way of getting the Super Bowl, God bless you. But I mean, it's a simple case of you have this team that just they're the boogeyman. They're the Patriots.
Yeah.
Remember, the Patriots for years and years and years, you just couldn't beat them. Every time you thought this is the year, and if you beat the Patriots, you went to the Super Bowl and you won the Super Bowl usually. If you didn't,
Mhm.
tough. Have a good day. But I just think that this is the boogeyman that these two quarterbacks have to somehow get over. They just have to
Yeah.
get over. And I don't know how they're going to do it, but
Yeah.
we'll
I mean,
have to see.
it's gonna be interesting. I'm super excited. I
Mhm.
think yeah, it's gonna be like a really fun playoffs. There's a fun season. I can't wait.
Mhm.
I mean, we'll talk about it down the road, but I think what I would love to do, and let me know what you think. And I mean, hopefully people will watch this and can put some suggestions in the comments. But
Yeah, that'd be
I
awesome.
think like moving forward, what I would like love to do here with you is like, whether it's like we find a show or a movie that we can watch over the week and then get together, talk mostly about that, and then have like a half hour like powwow of like, hey, what else did you watch and what else is going on in sports pop culture? We can keep doing that, but certainly, I mean, I know this one was a little longer. We'll probably try to keep it to like an hour most of the time, but
Yeah,
um, I think that would be cool just to like keep
100%.
ourselves like watching some new stuff. Hear like maybe something new is on, like if there's something new on Netflix or whatever, give it a shot. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I mean, we can talk offline, but I would love to kind of do that, and then like
Yeah,
maybe
100%.
moving forward, we do like half the time speaking about like one new thing, and then just like pop culture hour
Yeah,
too.
talking about old movies, talking about, if people have like recommendations for shows or movies to watch where it's like, hey, like this might be interesting to you, or hey, like I know you like comedies. Have you ever taken a game? What are your thoughts on this? Or even just
Yeah.
talking about sports in general. It's like, hey, like what do you think of the NBA season? There's so many storylines that go on every week, and we can kind of go back and forth on it. I mean, there's so many options, and if obviously you folks love it and you want to continue to recommend anything, we'd be happy to listen and see what we can kind of give our
Yeah, and I
insights on.
think if people like it, like moving forward, we can also make like this is pre-recorded,
Hmm.
PS to anyone watching, but moving forward, I mean, we're happy to do these live if we can get people in and
Yeah.
answer questions live as we're going and have you guys interact with us. I mean, we're just two fucking random guys, but we like to talk about this shit. And I mean, if people want to chime in and ask if we've seen something or our thoughts on any shows or movies or recommendations, I mean, I'd love to like chat with strangers too. So
Yeah.
that would be
Yeah.
cool. And I guess to close it off tonight, is there anything that you, Cam, would recommend me to watch between now and the next time we hop on?
Wow, that's a great question.
Maybe like a
Um,
hidden gem or like a movie I might not have seen.
yeah. I mean, may I ask, and I'm curious, like, have you ever seen The Godfather 1 and 2?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've seen The Godfather. Um, so right now I'm in a bit of a weird movie phase, and I go through it every so often. I'm in what I call my Tarantino phase. The Godfather was not directed by Quentin Tarantino. People don't come for me. I know, but I watched The Godfather, and then I was inspired to watch Pulp Fiction and Inglorious Bastards, and Django, and I know he wrote True Romance, and he's kind of gone down. And I'm not gonna name every Tarantino movie that's ever come out, but I'm in kind of my midst. But what I would say is, what was the last time you watched like a Tarantino movie?
I mean, during lockdown, I watched probably 4 or 5,
Hmm.
but I probably haven't watched any in a few years,
Yeah.
probably 3,
Uh,
4 years now.
I'd say if ever you get a chance, rewatch Pulp Fiction. I always say like I like to rewatch it every so often, just to kind of catch up. But to me, it's like one of my top 3 movies of all time. So you'll hear me probably say it a bunch. But what is your go-to recommendation for me to try and fit in this
Yeah,
week?
so at the end of every year, I like to watch like a lot of the like top movies of 2024, and then next year I'll do 2025. I also, when they announce the best picture for the Oscars, I like to watch all of them. So
Yeah.
I kind of get ahead of it now. A movie that I don't think will be nominated, but I would definitely recommend for you and for anyone listening, a bit of a hidden gem, not so much, but this movie called Dee Dee. Have you seen or heard of Dee Dee?
No, I've not seen or heard of Dee Dee.
Okay, I very good. It's a coming of age movie. Have you ever seen
Okay.
Eighth Grade?
Loved eighth grade. Loved eighth
Yeah, so
grade.
I would say it's basically like eighth grade, but
Hmm.
the main character is like similar age, but it's a Chinese boy.
Okay.
So it's like an Asian family, and it's like culturally, it's like a little bit different than eighth grade, obviously, but it's very similar. Like it's a very funny, there's some emotion. It's one of the better coming of age movies that I've seen in the last few years. And honestly, it rivals eighth grade. Like both of them are like top tier. Um, I had a really good time with it. It's like
Okay.
laughed, like maybe shed a couple tears, and it is very, very good. So
Hmm.
not a lot of people have heard of it, but I would definitely recommend that. And I will watch Pulp Fiction this week
Yeah,
if you
yeah, I'll
watch
watch
Dee
Didi.
Dee.
I'm gonna get around to Didi. I'm gonna try and find it on some stuff, and then obviously for the chat, if you have any recommendations for any like movies or TV shows, pretty open. I'll even I even watch anime, so if it's like an anime you have a recommendation on or stuff like that, yeah, I'm open to it. Just let us know.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a
Awesome.
lot
All
of
right.
fun. I
Yeah,
really I
this is
really
great.
do hope people listen. And if you are listening this deep in, we promise they won't always be this long. There was a lot to talk about. We've never done anything like this, so we'll be a little bit more focused in the future. But really appreciate anyone watching and looking forward to doing more of these.
100%, 100%. And thanks everybody for taking the time. We love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't know you yet. We don't know
We
if
don't know
anyone
yet, but
will
we love
listen, but
you.
if
Yeah.
there's one person listening, we love you.
We love
Jim,
you.
Susie, Carlos,
Yeah.
we love you.
Yeah. Yeah. Antoine, whomever it might be. But all right, everybody. Well, have a good night, okay?
All right.
All right.
Take it
Take care, man.
easy.